Hi everyone, welcome to the Assignment 1 overview video for EDSS379 and EDSS223. So this Assignment 1 overview video is being prepared for 2 units. The assignments are almost exactly the same. The only difference is the word counts in certain sections. So when there is a difference, I will be sure to be clear about these differences, but the instructions for the assignment in this video will be exactly the same. All right, so if you've watched the welcome video, then you will have heard me talk about the flexible portal assessment system. Again, some information here on what it's all about. And this is where you click to adjust your due date if you need to. And so watch that welcome video for more explanation on how that works. So this top section in both units, some general information which has been available to you in the first week prior to teaching. So you may have already had a look through this, but this is basically assignment information, very general information about word counts, extensions, sets, which I go through in the welcome video. How to access feedback when the assignments are handed back and are marked. Referencing, so some examples of referencing, for example, how to reference the topic notes. So if you're using the topic notes, then this is how you reference. And obviously for 223, the unit name will change. Formatting, some information there, and also results. So when results become available, this explains how you access your result and also your feedback. But you will hear me talk about the release of marks in overview videos in the future, so no need to worry about that at the moment. So an assignment cover page is required for all of your assignments that you submit in this unit, so be sure to have those, and you can just create your own or just use this, this document here, or use it as a guide. So this folder for academic skill support, the documents that are in here are also found on the UNE Academic Skills Office website, but I chose these ones because I often find that students have issues with paragraphs and different types of punctuation, so I've uploaded those more specific ones that I thought would be useful. But you can go again to the website and have a look at what's available there. Referencing resources, so just on how to quote authors, how to use in-text referencing, reference the internet, and how to avoid plagiarism. So just a note that if you have completed this unit previously, you are not allowed to submit any part or full section of your assignment that has been previously submitted. So the assignment has changed a bit in both units anyway, so that's not really going to be possible, but that's, you can plagiarize yourself. So be sure, if you're not sure what plagiarism is, then you should, you could come in here and read through how to avoid plagiarism. If you have completed this unit before and you'd like to discuss about what you are able to use from a previous, attempt at this unit, you can email me and we can have a discussion about it. So for EDSS 379, this first assignment is worth 50% of your final mark, and it's worth 2,000 words. And those of you who are in EDSS 223, this assignment is worth 40% of your final mark, and it is a length of 1,500 words. So in both units, the assignment is a mandatory task. You must complete this unit to be eligible to pass the unit. And for both units, the first assignment, Part B for 223, has the option of the 7 or 14-day flexible portal. All right, so for both units, there is a lot of information to support you in this task and how to complete it. The instructions are as clear as they can be for the amount of written words that I can write to explain the assignment in each of the assignment 1 sections. So these extra bits of material that are here, some examples and videos, these are to support you, but you don't have to use this material. You can just complete the assignment with just looking at the instructions. It is advised to look at the examples and also to watch the video, which you're watching now anyways, but there's another video that I will go over as well, because it's just going to support you and help you with the tasks that you need to complete in this assignment. So there's a lot of material to support you, as I said, and we'll go through what each of those bits are. So for EDSS 379, the assignment number 1 is due on Monday, July 22nd by 11:59 p.m. And for EDSS 223, the assignment is also due on July the 22nd, so the same date. So before you attempt this assignment, it is essential that you read through the topic notes for at least the first 4 weeks of this unit, going through the readings and watching the videos, as shown in the unit schedule. You're watching the video explanation video now, which is good. There'll be another video, as I said, and also reading the Assignment 1 information book and looking at the example that I've provided to you. Again, it's not essential to engage with the support, but it's available for you as required. It's here to help scaffold the assignment for you. So you need to take the time to become familiar with the New South Wales HSIE syllabus intended for use with students in K to 10. You need to download that. It looks like this. Okay, this is the current syllabus that's being used. And as we know, there's a new syllabus that will be coming out this year. But because this is the only one we have available, this is the one that we will be using. We will be looking at some of the changes that are going to be coming to the new syllabus. And there are, some minor changes. They're not really big changes, but, we will talk about that. So a lot of it is quite the same from what I've seen so far anyway. So for this assignment, you're going to be demonstrating your understanding of the material taught to you in the first 4 topics of this unit. You're going to be encouraged to think about how you will approach the teaching of history and becoming familiar with the curriculum for teaching years K to 6. You're going to be writing a response to a question, considering the teaching of concepts, so you'll need to know what those are, and completing a table. All right, so in this assessment task, you'll be writing a response to a question and considering the teaching of concepts and also completing a table. Ensure that you label each section to align with the question numbers that you're asked to answer. And in part C, you will be answering all the questions in the table that's been provided to you, which I'll show you in a moment. So in part A, you are going to be addressing the aim of the history syllabus. So this is 400 words, and this is for EDSS 379, and for 223, this is 300 words. Having a think about the aim of the history syllabus. Now, if you've had a chance to watch the dissection video, you'll already know this, but the aim of the history syllabus is here on this page here, which is page 11, yes. Okay, so it's very small and very succinct on what the aim is. So in this section of the assignment, you are going to be considering how the inquiry method, which we learn about in week 2, can help to achieve that aim that I just showed you, the aim of the history syllabus. So we're actually going to use ChatGPT, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, and we're going to create a response to this question and critically analyze the response that's been provided to you. Okay, so the question that we're going to be thinking about, as I said, is how the inquiry method can help to achieve the aims of the syllabus. In years gone by, we used to have students write a long essay about how the inquiry method can help to achieve the aims of the syllabus, which was an okay assignment, I suppose, or part of the assignment that they used to do. But now we actually think it would be better to have students use the technology that's available to all of us and to our students as well. Students are trying to use this in schools, especially in the older grades. So it's important that we become familiar with this technology as well, and also think about how we can be quite critical about the responses that are generated. In my experience using ChatGPT and other forms of artificial intelligence, the responses that are generated are often vague, require more substantial discussion and not very critical or analytical. So I think this is an opportunity for us to work with this technology and try to become very, I suppose, skeptical and critical of how this technology can be used. So you're going to go to the following link, which is this one here, and it will look like this when you go to it. And then you are going to, in the prompt, you're going to copy all of this here and put it into this here, so where I'm typing right here. So the way that you go from here to there is just click on try ChatGPT. So this is just the free version, and you type it in there and hit this arrow, and then you get a response. So you should get a 500-word essay answering that question, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. You're going to copy and paste that response into the template. So this is the template here. Okay, so you're going to put it in here. So you've downloaded that, and that is available in both units just here, and it's called template. Once you've copied that into that Word document, you're going to read through it. You have, by this point, before attempting the assignment, done your readings, watched the lectures and the videos, and done any additional readings. So you can be more critical of the response that's there because you have that knowledge and understanding. So you're going to read through that response, and you're going to critically analyze it by considering how different parts of the response could be expanded on, and the ways in which it's probably a subpar response that's being given, and how you can build on that. You're required to find different parts of the essay that require substantial work in order to actually properly and sufficiently answer the question. So having the knowledge and understanding after doing the readings and so forth, and getting through the material, you'll look at the response and think, gee, that's, that could be said in a different way. But what you're really looking for is the content. So we're not looking at spelling or anything like that. We're looking at the actual content. So you need to be able to identify these and show and explain how the response could be improved. So just having a look at EDSS223, you are going to for both units, be identifying 4 different areas. So for EDSS223, you have 75 words to create a response for 4 different sections in the essay, and EDSS379, you have 100 words. Both units, you have an extra 10% for this assignment, so you can use that in any way that you wish. So let me just show you what that looks like, because that may have been just a little bit confusing. So if we have a look at the example, which is the same example for this section for both units is exactly the same. So pretend that I've put in that question and received some type of response. I would identify 4 different areas, and I would add my comments in like this. The way that you do this is that in Word at the top, there's a word that says review. You click on that, and then you highlight the text and click on new comment, and that's how you create a comment. This comment here is not related to anything that I've highlighted here. It's actually a comment that I used for a similar assignment in a different unit with secondary teachers. So I just didn't want to restrict what you could talk about in your response. So you're identifying 4 different areas, again, that you think could be improved in an essay such as this one. So it sort of gives you a little bit of an opportunity to sort of mark an assignment, even though it's a lot, more difficult than what we would expect from a student in early stage 1 or stage 1, 2, even 3. But again, we are using our analysis skills and being critical about what information has been presented to us. So you might identify something about a sentence that requires more explanation. You may find that there are 2 sentences that are put together that don't really go together, they don't build, they don't connect, and perhaps there's more information that's needed. So it's up to you how you want to do it. You should have references. You will be marked down if you don't. And by references, I mean you are discussing in your comment the issue with what you have identified and how it could be changed. So for example, again, this is for a different unit. These 2 sentences require further explanation of how environmental literacy is defined. I also question whether the topics of ecology, sustainability, environmental ethics are the best examples here of the society and environment curriculum. These are very geography-based, thus ignoring many of the other syllabuses. A better response would incorporate such and such, and I provided reference. So you'd have something similar to that. So again, you are highlighting 4 sections that require further consideration, explanation of the essay, inserting the comment, which will open on that sidebar as I showed you in the example. and explaining your choice in approximately 100 words for 379 and 75 words for 223. And the reason that the word counts are different is because one unit is a 200 level and one is a 300 level. Again, your explanation needs to include an identification of the issue that you've found and also a proposition on how it could be improved to better answer the question with references to support your ideas. You are being marked in this section on your ability to critically analyze a piece of work, challenge ideas, and provide constructive criticism. So those are the three things that we're looking for. We need to make sure that your comments can be seen because we can only mark what's shown on the screen. I say you may decide to copy your points below, but you really should do this, and you will see that in the template, just in case the sidebar doesn't appear. So I will show you what that looks like in the example. So down here, you will see that the comments are down here as well. Okay, so that's just in case the sidebar doesn't show on Turnitin, although it has in the past, so it should be okay. But please put the comments below just in case. So the other thing I wanted to show you is that in the assignment section for both units, you will see something called Assignment 1 Part A Planner. You don't have to use this. You can completely ignore it if you want to. And what this looks like is just this document here. And this is just the aim of the syllabus being broken down into its 4 parts. And while you're doing your readings over these first few weeks, you may find something that's relevant to that point that you could use in your critical analysis. So you may find that the generated response really doesn't tap into anything about the stimulating students interested in enjoyment of exploring the past. But in your readings, you have found some great information that helps to explain that, and you can use this to write down where you read that. So it's nothing worse than getting to the assignment and thinking, I do remember reading something about that, but I don't remember where it was. So this can help you stay organized in that way. Again, you don't have to use it. It's just there in case you want to. All right, moving on to Part B. So EDSS 379, 400 words. EDSS 223, also 400 words. So that makes it nice and easy. All right, so thinking about the concepts. Now, if and when you watch the history dissection video, you will know that I go through these tables at the beginning. So these are the outcomes. Won't go over that again at the moment because that's just repeating information. But this one is what we're going to be focusing on in Part B, which is the concepts continuum. Now you'll know that there's another continuum table on skills, and we'll come back to that in a few moments. But for Part B, we are looking at the history concepts continuum. You can see the concepts here are continuity and change, cause and effect, perspectives, empathetic understanding, significance, and contestability. The concept that we are going to be focusing on in Part B of this assignment is perspectives. And this is taught from early stage 1 right through to year 12. So perspectives is really important in the HSIE HAS area. And in particular, it's one of the concepts identified in the history syllabus. So going back to the assignment. All right, so let's think about what perspectives really is all about. In order to think historically, we must consider different perspectives. And one of the important concepts in the history curriculum is perspectives. As stated by Green and Price, perspectives as a concept is defined as when students are given opportunities to describe events and developments from the perspective of people who lived at the time, and to identify past events and developments that have been interpreted in different ways. Further, Gilbert recognizes that there are 2 different types of perspectives that are important in studying history. First, there are the perspectives of people in the past, and second, there are different perspectives on the past, which is also described as interpretations. So remembering that when we're thinking about perspectives, we're talking about perspectives of people in the past. So it might be something, primary source that somebody's written in the past that we are looking at. So maybe the diary of Anne Frank, these were her words. So that's her perspective of people in the past. And there are different perspectives on the past. So people who have written about the past, and these are often secondary sources. So the perspectives can be thought about in these different ways. So for this part of the assignment, you're going to be thinking about how you can teach your students to think historically through an understanding of the concept of perspectives. In order to design a learning activity where you can teach your students this concept, you must first choose one or two information sources. So you're welcome to do one or two. So choose an area of content from the New South Wales history syllabus from stage 2 or stage 3. You're going to copy the content with a reference and then only reference the content that informs the learning activity below. I'll show you what I mean there in a moment. Be sure to look at the table below to understand the focus for teaching the concept of perspectives in the units of work. So having a look at this, which is, you can download the syllabus and have a look at it a little bit more closely. So you're looking at this dot point, this one, or this one. Sorry, no, we're looking at stages 2 and 3 only. So you're either going to be designing a learning activity where students are looking at different points of view within an historical context, or you're going to be designing a learning activity that looks at different points of view in the past and present. So that's your focus for this learning activity when you design your learning activity. Now you need to find content. So if you are in a different state, you are going to be using the New South Wales history syllabus. I meant to say that at the beginning, and that's because of our accreditation. So let's go to stage 2. Again, watching the dissection video will help you understand what I'm going through here, all the different units of work. So in stage 2, we have community and remembrance, and we also have first contacts. So say you want to focus on stage 2. You will find an area of that unit of work that you'd like to look at, have students explore perspectives. So you'll have a look through here, and maybe you might want to focus on stories of the First Fleet, including reasons for the journey, who traveled to Australia, and their experiences following arrival. And then you may choose students describe the establishment of the British colony at Port Jackson. One dot point would probably be enough for one learning activity. So you will copy that into the document. So if we have a look at the template, you will be putting that here into the content and referencing it, providing that reference. You wouldn't want to put the whole unit of work because you definitely wouldn't be doing that in one learning activity. You probably wouldn't even cover all of this in one learning activity. You may look at 2 dot points, but 1 would be sufficient. Okay, so that's how you identify. You just have a look through the different units of work and decide what you want to focus on. So again, if you're looking at stage 2, you're choosing either community and remembrance or first contacts. If you want to go the stage 3 way, then the 2 options are the Australian colonies or Australia as a nation. So those are your 4 units of work that you can choose from. So have a look through those, decide what's the most interesting to you, and go with that one. Making sure that when you choose your concept, you are choosing the one that aligns with that stage. So if you're choosing one of the stage 3 units of work, you wouldn't choose a stage 2 perspective dot point. Okay, so you're making sure that it matches. All right, so let's have a look at the example for this part. So I've used the geography syllabus so that I didn't take away from the options that you can use. I've just copied the content and provided a reference. Okay. All right, so you are going to choose an image or 2. In the past, I have found that when students complete this assignment, it's a bit easier to design learning activities where students are using 2 images to sort of compare different perspectives. You are welcome to just use 1 image if that's what you want. It's completely up to you. So these are my 2 images. For example, I would provide a reference, and you also need to have a caption. So what does that mean? Let's have a look at that, making sure that I've done everything here. So choosing an area of content, copying it with a reference, and only copying the content that you're actually going to be focusing on. So you're choosing 2 images, provide a screenshot of those images with a reference and also a link to the website where we can access it. Provide a caption for the image, briefly explaining what the perspective is that's being shown in the image. Design a learning activity where you will have your students analyze the source and identify a perspective. or comparing two perspectives that is presented in the image. You need to read through the readings on how students analyze historical sources and identify different perspectives. The benefit, again, of having two images is that you can ask students to compare. So in 150 words, that's enough time to design your learning activity. You're welcome to put this into dot points if you wish to save on words. For question D, you're explaining how your students will understand the concept of perspectives through this learning activity. So thinking about maybe you chose different points of view in the past and present. What have you done in your learning activity to help students gain that knowledge and understanding of that particular concept? You need to justify why your learning activity is suitable for this understanding. So imagine yourself perhaps in a school and you tell a teacher about this learning activity, and say a teacher says to you, I don't think that will really help the students really understand that concept. I don't think a teacher would ever say that, but just pretend. And this would be you justifying and saying, actually it does because, and you're just providing that justification. So you're not discussing the perspective for the entire response. So you're not explaining basically the perspective being presented in the image. That's what the caption is for. But it must be clear through the justification why this learning activity is suitable to achieve this understanding. You should have references in this response that's outside of the syllabus. So you're looking for wider reading on the teaching of perspectives, and the textbook is a really great option for this. And this is to support your ideas and choices for the learning activity. And you have 200 words to do this. So in lecture 4, there is an example of an image and another image as well. One created by E. Phillips Fox. Do not use either of the two images that are used in the 4th lecture in this unit. Okay, just before we move on to part C, when you're thinking about working on number C and thinking about how do you actually teach students to analyze history sources, a great resource here is historyskills.com. Now, this is more geared towards high school, but it can give you an idea of what types of things we're looking for when we are teaching source analysis, perspectives, and so forth. So come to this website and have a look at some of the material. So if we're looking at the criticism of sources and analysis, there's stuff here on perspectives and how to teach determining a source's perspectives. I encourage you to have a look through here. It goes on what perspectives are all about. How do I determine a source's perspective? Gives you some examples again for more upper years, but it can really give you a great idea of where to go with your learning activity. You remember the age that you are teaching, so be sure to keep it stage appropriate, but I really encourage you to come in and have a look at this website. All right, so just before we go back to thinking about part C for this assignment, I just want to watch this quick video and have it in this explanation video for the first assignment, just so that hopefully you guys will watch this video here on how to determine a source's perspective, and that may help a little bit as you are designing your learning activity. And this will supplement the 2 lectures for week 4, where we focus just on perspectives.
When you need to analyse a historical source, being able to successfully identify the perspective of the source's creator is incredibly handy. In particular, discovering the perspective allows you to draw conclusions about a source's reliability and usefulness to your research task or classwork. So what is perspective? Perspective, simply put, is the point of view from which the creator of a source describes historical events. In other words, it's how a person sees the world around them. Everyone sees and understands historical events differently depending on a range of factors, including their age, gender, social position, beliefs, and values. Let's take an example. Imagine a football match where 2 teams from different towns play each other and one side achieves victory over the other. The next day, newspapers will report on the same football game in different ways. The newspaper from the winning team's town will have a positive view of the events and will usually talk about how great their players' actions were. However, the newspaper from the losing side's town will be quite negative about the match and focus on the failures of their own players. So how can 2 newspapers provide different versions of the same event? The answer is perspective, they had a different point of view. Perspective works the same in history. Two opposing sides in a war, or in politics, or social struggles, will see exactly the same event in different ways. They'll describe it using different vocabulary. But please be aware, just because people have different perspectives and describe things in different ways, it doesn't automatically mean that one side is being honest and the other is lying. It just means that they have a different point of view. However, there may be occasions where a difference in perspective goes to the extreme and causes someone to lie or have an unfair view of people or events. That becomes bias, which is a different source analysis skill which we'll talk about in another video. So how do you determine a source's perspective? The first step in determining perspective is to know who the creator of the source was. Conduct some background research on who created the source and find out details about them. In doing so, you'll be able to understand how they viewed the past. So what kind of things are you looking for during your background research? First of all, you could be looking for their nationality, American, Japanese, etc. For example, in the First World War, British, German or Serbian soldiers would view the events of the war differently based upon their own nationality. You could also be looking for their social status. For example, are they a knight? Are they a soldier? Are they a peasant? For example, a medieval knight will see things very differently to a medieval peasant, even though they're from the same historical era. You could also be looking for their particular political persuasion. So are they conservative, liberal, communist, for example? You could also be looking for a particular cultural background. Are they European or American, or come from a very specific cultural group? You're also looking for different religious beliefs. Christian, Muslim, etc. For example, a Christian warrior during the Crusades would see events quite differently to a Muslim warrior at the same battle or location. And finally, you could also be looking for the creator's educational background. For example, what university they work for, because they might have a particular worldview. So now that you understand what perspective is and what details you're looking for in your background research, let's go through some examples and see how this affects sources. Most people have heard about Julius Caesar, a Roman politician and general. In his account of his wars in modern-day France, an area called Gaul to the Romans, he describes all of the things he does as a commander, leading his troops and gaining political glory. So you could talk about, from a perspective point of view, the fact that he has a particular political persuasion. He is from a political group known as the Populares. You could also talk about him having a military perspective because he is a general. Or you could just talk generally about his cultural background, the fact that he is Roman. He may have a Roman perspective. Any of these options are perfectly valid ways to talk about Julius Caesar's perspective. One more example as well. When American Commodore Matthew Perry sailed into Japan in 1853 and 1854, the American soldiers that were with Perry saw him differently to the Japanese people he was meeting with. Compare this photo of Perry, taken by an American photographer, and see how he stands in a very militaristic way, very dominant. Now compare this to a painting made by the Japanese people of the time. You can see that it's almost demonic in his depiction of Matthew Perry, and this demonstrates the fear and distrust that the Japanese culture had of foreigners at the time. So understanding the different cultural perspectives of the Americans versus the Japanese at the time helps understand how they viewed their world. So now that you have a better understanding of what perspective means in regards to historical sources, I hope you feel more confident in your studies. If you need any further explanations...
All right, so that website can be very handy to help you understand perspectives, I hope. And we will be looking at that in week 4. All right, so heading down to part C. For EDSS379, this is 1,200 words, and for EDSS223, this is 800 words. So in this part of the assignment, you are going to be designing learning activities to teach content areas within different units of work. So for EDSS379, you will be focusing on doing a learning activity for Stage 1, Stage 2, and Stage 3. In EDSS223, you will be doing 2 different learning activities, one for Stage 1, and you can choose between either Stage 2 or Stage 3. All right, so again, we are using the template for this part of the assignment as well. So we've got, for EDSS379, we've got 3 different tables, and 223, there should only be 2 in your template. Okay, so you're going to be filling this in, and I will show you with the example what that will look like. and what you need to do for each section. So for the first one, you have no choice. You are choosing stage 1 from the New South Wales K to 10 history syllabus. We're not looking at early stage 1 in this assignment. You're going to reference the syllabus. So if we just look at the example, we can see I just used the geography one. You will reference the syllabus and put stage 1 there. Select and name one section or topic of the content for stage 1, and it tells you where you can locate this information for stage 1, and you need to quote and reference it. So if we go and have a look at stage 1, we know that there are 2 units of work for stage 1, those being present and past family life, and also the past and the present. So those are 2 different units of work, both just over a page long. So you're going to have a look at this content and decide what kind of learning activity do I want to do. I suppose it's whatever you're interested in, or maybe it's something you don't know anything about, or you want to challenge yourself and think about how you would teach that in the classroom. So if you were to choose, say, this one, so you would type the past and the present in your example, you would put the topic or depth study, which is the unit of work. So the past and the present, you would put that there. Then you are going to choose the content. So say, for example, I wanted this one, I would copy that, and I would say students are going to look at an aspect of local history, so something in their local area. So for a learning activity, you probably wouldn't use more than 1 dot point. You could use 2 if you're sort of covering a little bit of 2 dot points, but anything more than 2 dot points, and we will find that probably to be too much. So you will copy that content here, and this example is, again, from the geography syllabus, so not relevant to history whatsoever. I will discuss the referencing here. I will get to that. The information in the table can be confusing because I've used a little bit from geography and history, but just this more for the purpose of seeing how it will be presented. All right, so you've chosen your content area. That's what you like. So heading back to the question, you're going to select and name a knowledge and understanding outcome relevant to the content that you're going to choose that will be achieved in the activity. You need to quote the outcome, and there's an outcome that you can't use. All right, so let's have a think about this. Going to the history syllabus, let's look at this unit of work. These are the outcomes for this unit of work. Now, so this is on page 38. Let's just scroll up very quickly, and if you've watched the dissection video, you will know this already, but we'll just quickly go over. There's also another table at the beginning, which displays the outcomes for different stages. So these are the outcomes here. And there's both the knowledge and understanding outcomes as well as the skill-based outcomes in the same table, which they don't do after stage 3. They actually separate them in history. But here, because there aren't a lot of them, they put them together. There are some outcomes that you can't use. So for example, we're not using any of these ones here. And we're also not using, no, we're not using those ones there. So you'll see that in the assignment though as well. So if you go back to the unit of work, you will see these codes dispersed throughout the different units. Some outcomes will be taught in more than 1 unit of work across stage 1. So out of the 2 units of work in stage 1, you will see that some of these are repeated. And that just means that we need to teach that outcome to students across 2 units, across 2 different year levels. That's one thing to take note of. So let's just head back to page 38, which is the unit of work that I had chosen for stage 1 of this assignment. So that's early stage 1. All right, the past and the present. So for this one, we know that 1-4 is not an option. So I would choose which one of these is most relevant to the content that I want to teach. Okay, so it'd probably be this one, 1-2. So putting that here, so again, this one's for geography, but you would put that here and you would provide a reference. And you can either reference it from the table or you can reference it from the unit of work. If you are using the table that I showed you at the beginning of this syllabus, making sure that you go down to the unit of work and make sure that it's actually an outcome for that unit. So that's a mistake that sometimes students make. For example, they might have, oh, I'm going to teach such and such in the past and the present unit, and I'm going to address HT1-1. Well, guess what? HT1-1 isn't actually an outcome that's taught in this unit, so it's not relevant. So be sure that you are choosing the right outcome for the right unit of work, okay? And they do change across the stages. Going back to the assignment, now that you've chosen your outcome, you are going to select and name one of the skills relevant to the chosen stage. We are not going to be choosing explanation and communication, so please do not choose that one. And the reason for that is because I really want to focus on really history specific skills. And explanation and communication, you know, there are ways to communicate in history and geography, but I want to focus on some of the other ones that are a little bit more difficult to teach and often hard to think up learning activities. So we really want to challenge ourselves here. So going back to this unit of work, the past and the present, this is actually a skill-based outcome, but we're not going to use that in this unit of this assignment. What we're going to do, and again, if you've watched the dissection video, this will be repetitive a little bit. We're going to use this skills continuum table. So yes, students do need to develop HT1-4, which is that skill-based outcome, but these are the skills broken down. So not using this last column here, you are going to choose one of these other skills that is relevant to your content area that you're going to teach. So are you going to be teaching comprehension, chronology, terms, and concepts? Are you going to be teaching analysis and use of sources? Are you going to be teaching the skill of understanding perspectives or interpretations, empathetic understanding, or research? You only need to choose one of these. And as we were looking at stage 1 for this first example here, it would be one of these ones here. So if you choose research, then your learning activity is going to have to teach students how to pose questions about the past using sources provided. So there's a lot to do in a learning activity. You are teaching content, but you are also teaching a skill, and that's something that we will talk about in this first 4 weeks of this unit, because there is a very specific and certain way to teach skills. We really need to be breaking that down and scaffolding and modeling this for our students. Okay, and starting from week 2, when we look at the inquiry method, this is something that we'll be looking at to a great extent. So one of these is going to be most relevant to what you're doing. So I was doing the past and the present. Maybe I would look at exploring and using a range of sources about the past, and that would be what I would put in my example. So for example, analysis and use of sources, and then just writing in that dot point. So obviously that's geography, but if I was doing analysis and use of sources, I would be writing that there and then also copying one of these dot points. You could do 2 if you wanted, but you only have to do 1. It's up to you what you think. Then you're going to, in 200 words, so let's have a look, describe a learning activity relevant to the content. So I was looking at local history. How can I teach about local history in a history lesson or in a learning activity? Sometimes learning activities can run for different amounts of time. Sometimes you may, depending on the group of students or the year level, you may have 2 learning activities in a 60-minute lesson, but for the younger years, you might get through 1 learning activity in 60 minutes. So it really depends. Sometimes you would only get through 1 learning activity with year 7s because it just depends on the dynamic of the class. So let's just, for argument's sake, say, you know, about the 30 to 45-minute time frame for a learning activity, give or take. So you are designing a learning activity, and in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I need to teach this content and I need them to develop the skill. So there's 2 things happening in your learning activity. Okay, and you have 150 words, and again, you can use dot points as stated here on the example. And remembering content and skill development. That's the point of your learning activity. Now, when you are designing your learning activity, you need to ensure that your students are producing something, because when you get to G, you are going to run into trouble if students aren't. In the past, we have had students design a learning activity where there was just a discussion, And look, discussions are really great, but for this assignment, you need to have students producing something, whether it's a picture and a few sentences written, or it's some sort of response. Each student needs to give you something so that you can assess whether these students have achieved the outcome. So it's sort of like a formative assessment. So you were thinking back to the outcome that you had chosen. So if I go back to my example where I had chosen HT1-2, identifies and describes significant people, events, places, and sites in the local community over time. I would need to design a learning activity where students are actually given the opportunity to identify people from the past, or in the local community, and also describing. So in order to be able to explain how you have given students that opportunity to achieve that outcome, you need to know what it means to identify. You need to know what it means to describe. You need to know what it looks like in the classroom when students show you that they can do that and that they can achieve that. The best thing to do to understand this a little bit better is to go back to this video here, which will be in the assignment section called What Are Those Cognitive Verbs All About? And I really break down what students are doing when they analyze, when they identify, and so forth. And it's a really handy video. I've been told students have really appreciated it. So make sure that when you come to this section where you have to explain the achievement of the outcome, that you are familiar with that video and also keeping in mind that cognitive verb, because the comment that you will receive back is focus on the cognitive verb. How are students showing you that identification? How are the students showing you that description? If they're not identifying or describing anything in their activity or whatever their product is that they're giving you, then they can't really show you if they've achieved the outcome, can they? Again, outcomes are achieved over units of work, not necessarily in one single learning activity. This is true. But we want to be sure that you understand how to align outcomes with content. And that's what we're trying to do here in this assignment. And really paying attention to those cognitive verbs as well, because that's something that's really important as well. And it may be the case that your students don't achieve the outcome, but that's what teaching is all about. We give students opportunities to show us the level that they're at through a unit of work and different content, different learning activities. Then you are going to explain how the learning activity helps students to develop the skill. Now, this is something that will probably take longer than the outcome explanation because you need to be thinking about what the teacher is doing. So that's the difference between the explanation of the outcome and the explanation of skill development. Outcome is what the students are doing to show you through the product that they've produced. The skill development is what you are doing as the teacher to teach that skill. How are you teaching analysis and use of sources? What are you doing in the classroom to teach that to students? That doesn't mean that you only talk about the teacher talking in the front of the class saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. There can be that component, but there also needs to be the students practicing. So you need to really break down and explain how you are scaffolding it for the students. What are you doing to teach students analysis of sources? Is there a table? Is there a graphic organizer? Are there questions that they have to answer? So you need to really break that down. So remember, everything's student-centered. It's not just the teacher dictating. The students are very active in the learning, but your explanations require that one is more what the students are doing and the other one is more what the teacher's doing. All right, so going back to the assignment now, so for EDSS379, you're doing the same thing for stage 2, and then again for stage 3, and EDSS223 again, you are choosing for your second table, either stage 2 or stage 3. Making sure that you have a reference list for all the references that you use. You don't have to reference ChatGPT, that's fine. Just this last section here, making sure you have that cover page, making sure that you don't use certain outcomes that you're not supposed to use, and that I've gone over that. The top section of the table is not included in your word count, so you probably have more than the allocated word count, but that's only because there are a lot of sections throughout the syllabus and references that you are putting in this assignment, and none of that's included. So don't stress too much about the word count, just adhere to these word counts here, and you should be fine, okay? Ensure part B of your assignment is double space, and the table needs to be single spaced, please. Making sure that you're watching this video, which you are anyways, and the video on cognitive verbs, which I just mentioned. You can put the learning activities in dot points. The explanation should be in paragraph form, even though they're presented in the table. Include a reference list following those APA 7 guidelines. Check your grammar and spelling. You need to show evidence of wider reading in parts A and B, but you don't need to have any extra references for part C, only the syllabus. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the learning activities are not an inquiry sequence. So when you get to week 2 and you're having, we're learning about the active model, you are not doing that for this assignment. That is something that we will do for assignment number 2. This one is just one single learning activity. The active model has 6 different learning activities in it. You are only doing one single learning activity. So no need to have an active model in your learning activity section. We will be looking for excellent paragraph writing. So the explanation of skill development should be longer because we're focusing on what the teacher's doing and how teachers are teaching that skill to students. All right, so just heading back to the main page, which is the same for both units. The assignment 1 information, we'll have some more examples here. So if we just have a look through this, you can look at some frequently asked questions that students have asked in the past. So some are very general questions, some are more specific about parts A and B, and part C. All right, so having a look at what an activity might look like, and I didn't put this in dot points, but I just wanted to show you an example of what sort of things we're thinking about when we're designing our learning activity. So this is an example from the geography syllabus. So, I've shown here the content that I'm looking at, also the outcome, and how that translates into a learning activity. And these words that are highlighted here are my consideration of the word description. So when we are describing something, there are processes that we need to be involved in order to be able to do that description. And that includes ordering, identifying, and explaining. So that gives you an example of how to design a learning activity in consideration of all these things that you need to be thinking about. So this is a model that you will see time and time again, in particular, starting from week 2 in different videos, you will see me talking about this. It's from the Green and Price textbook. It's probably the most important figure that you will see in this unit, and also in any other unit, I think, because learning activities can fail if students don't have the skills. So we really need to be thinking about that skills continuum table in history, and we'll do it in geography as well. And those of you in 223 will do this in 324. What are the skills? Analysis and use of sources. How do we teach that? How do we model it? How do we scaffold it? Research. How do we model research to our students at different year levels? How do we teach it? How do we scaffold it? So when you are thinking about your learning activity and the skill that you have chosen, you need to be thinking about doing this in your learning activity. So never assume the competence of your students. Yes, that's true. Modeling it. So if you need your students to analyze something in a certain way, you can show them how to do it. You can teach it, and then you can break it down into small steps for them and give them charts, diagrams. We'll be making sure that we are familiar with how to do that in this unit as well. Especially in the second assignment, it'll be very important to be designing these types of graphic organizers and then getting them to practice. So practice, practice, practice. They always say practice makes perfect, and that's true for our students as well. We need them to be practicing skills. So keep this diagram in the back of your mind as you are designing your learning activity. So a section on referencing and feedback that was given to students in previous years. So we've gone through the assignment. We've gone through the assignment 1 information book. You're watching the video right now. You will hopefully watch this video on cognitive verbs. The assignment 1 planner is there for you if you wish to use it. The example, we've gone through that. I've showed you the template that you will use to fill in, to hand in your assignment. Assignment 1 criteria, I'll show you that in a moment. Any questions you might have, you put them on this Assignment 1 discussion form, and it's the exact same in 223. The marking criteria is a little bit different across the two units, so I'll just quickly go through the marking criteria for 379. So Part A is out of 15 marks. Part B is out of 5 marks for identifying appropriate content area and also choosing 1 or 2 images with having those captions. A detailed learning activity that's presented to help students engage with the understanding of the concept, and that explanation and justification is given 10 marks. So each of the 3 different sections, this is for 379 again, the learning activities are given 10 marks, and the 2 explanations are given 5 marks each. Your APA referencing, we will be having a look at, making sure that you are referencing properly, also making sure that you demonstrate the professional literacy expected of a teacher. So for Part C, that top section of the table, we need to make sure that you are copying what you need to from the syllabus correctly. So making sure the outcomes are actually from that unit of work, as I showed you. Now, there's one other thing that I forgot to mention. One of the chosen content areas, so either stage 1, stage 2, or 3, one of those must be about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures, and you can identify that through highlighting in yellow. If you want to do all 3, 2 or 3 tables on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures, that's fine, but at least one must be highlighted in yellow just to show us that you are addressing that outcome. We need that to be clear. All right, so for 223, the marking setup is a little bit different. So Part A is with 25 marks. Part B, you have 5 marks for the image, the caption, and the appropriate content area, 10 marks for the learning activity, and then 10 marks for the explanation and justification. Part C is exactly the same, so 10 marks for those learning activities and 5 and 5 for those 2 explanations, and then 10 marks for that last section on literacy, referencing, and highlighting the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures. Now, the one thing that I did want to mention before I finish up this video is you might see the syllabus is referenced in different ways. And so, for example, in the assignment section, you will see that I've used BOSS, New South Wales in some areas. And then the example, I have NESA. The reason for this is because I use the physical copy that was provided by the Board of Studies. Most people don't use that. They use the printed PDF version. So if you're using the printed PDF version, then it is NESA. If you're using the printed copy, which was printed in 2012, even though it's exactly the same, that's a Board of Studies. And they did do a few minor updates in the NESA version since 2012. You won't lose marks for using one or the other. I would say just use NESA. The only difference really is some of the page numbers are a little bit different, but really it's mostly all the same. The changes have been very, very minor. So I think that's it from me for this Assignment 1 overview video. Looking forward to working with you on this assignment, and I will be watching the Assignment 1 discussion forum to see if anyone has any questions. So good luck, and looking forward to seeing your assignments. Bye, everyone.